Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 97 of How I Built It. Today, I'm talking to Max Seelemann from Ulysses. Ulysses is one of my favorite Mac and iOS apps, and I am really excited to talk to him today because it is a different perspective on the software developing process, something different than what we usually do. Ulysses is software I use nearly every day to write up show notes, scripts, articles, and more. And I was really keen to hear how they build it over at Ulysses. So sit back and enjoy the show. We recorded this around the time of WWDC, so I know Ulysses has done a lot of really cool stuff since then to integrate with Mac OS and iOS 12. So just really cool to hear about their process. But first, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Pantheon and Backblaze. You'll hear about Pantheon later on in the show, so for now, let me tell you about Backblaze. This episode is brought to you by Backblaze. As someone who works online all the time from home, I know how important offsite backups are. That's why I use Backblaze. For just $5 a month, you can fully back up your Mac or PC no matter how much space you need. It's all unlimited. They make it super easy to do it too. Just install their app on your computer, and they take care of the rest. That's why they've already backed up over 600 petabytes of data. You'll learn more about them later in this episode, but do yourself a favor and start the backup process now. For just $5 a month. Go to backblaze.com/build something. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? Today, my guest is Max Seelemann? We just went over this before and I didn't write it down properly. He is the co-founder and lead developer of one of my favorite iOS apps, Ulysses. Max, thanks for joining me today. Yeah, absolutely. So, for those listening who don't know who you are or what Ulysses is, why don't you give us a little rundown? Who are you? What do you do? What's Ulysses?
So, I'm the co-founder and lead developer of Ulysses, and it's a project we've started 15 years ago already. And it's a writing app, basically. It's for creative writing. It helps you focus on your text, helps you organize your texts, and makes it very easy to get it out wherever you want it, be it on a blog or email or PDF or Word files. Doesn't matter. So that's it. It's the idea is it's your one-stop writing solution for everything you write.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can attest to that. Since using Ulysses, I think I've opened up Word like once or twice. Yeah, so it's absolutely my favorite thing. And it's got great markdown support and things like that too.
Right.
So I did not realize that you were 15 years old. So did you get your start on the Mac, or was it?
Yes. So
Cool.
I think Ulysses 1.0, the first. So we have two generations of Ulysses, but the first Ulysses generation launched July 1st, 15 years ago.
Great.
So
Wow.
that's a very long time. Yeah, it was macOS 10.1 times.
Wow.
So
That's fantastic. So let's see, 15 years ago, that's around 2003, if I'm doing my math
right.
correctly.
Exactly.
So that's great. That gives me really good context for the rest of these questions, right? Because the first is the next one is how did you come up with the idea for Ulysses?
So the way it all came to be was my partner Marcus, whom I didn't know at the time. He wanted to write a book, a novel, and he was looking for tools he could do it with. And to quote him, he only found apps for developers and secretaries, where app for developers would be BB Edit and secretaries would be Word.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't like any of those. So he came up with an idea for a writing app and then went on a mailing list to find someone who could do it. And I was in school at that time, and but he, I said, well, I can do it, very easy, and it took quite a while to actually get it done. But then that's how we started, and we've never stopped since then.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, around 2003. Even, I mean, fast forward to when I discovered Ulysses, which is now less than a year ago. Like I listened to App Stories and
Hmm.
the folks over at Relay FM who's where I found this out from, found out about Ulysses from. There's still like not, in my opinion, there's not a great writing app like Ulysses, which includes Markdown and export to PDF.
Hmm.
I used Editorially a few years ago and was a big fan of that, but they closed their doors about
Hmm.
a year later, and so um, I imagine back then the landscape was even worse. So
It was. It was different. It wasn't
yeah,
necessarily worse. I mean, there were fewer users, but those that were there were very much into buying apps. So it's really, um, it was really a different time, and people would be, I would say, people would be spending more actually on apps,
mm-hmm.
and so now that more common users have joined all the platforms, and especially since iPhone really became a mass market, I would say. It's changed a bit. So yeah. But it was okay back then. I mean, are a lot of developers that have been around for very long. For example, the Omni Group. They got they got started in the 90s.
Yeah,
When Apple. I mean, there was no Apple back in the 90s. Basically,
right,
They
right,
started on Next, and same was for us. I mean, 2003, Apple was still really really doomed. I mean,
right,
really doomed.
right.
um, yeah, so that's still, but it was okay. I mean, I also didn't have to make a living of it. I mean, I was still in high school when we
Hmm.
started, so it was a nice extra income, and I could afford stuff that other students couldn't, like getting a PowerBook G4.
Nice.
Was a real nice thing. I did like in the second month or so after after we had this initial sale, um, and then I over the years I've kept to finance my university with it, and was able to do just that. Need to say, university in Germany is pretty inexpensive compared to the US. So it's all publicly funded. So all you need to
Yeah.
cover for is like your housing and your food. So that was doable, and I was able to go to WWDC every year. So that's what it did for like a decade. And only then we decided to take it full time. It's been always a hobby project for all the time, and only then we decided to take it full time.
Wow. Wow. So that's also incredibly interesting. So so I do want to back up before we get to that next
Yeah,
point. So it was 2003 you made this app, and like you said, Apple was still, they weren't the Apple of today, right?
definitely not. No.
So how was the decision process? Like how did that go when you said, "All right, we're going to develop this app for the Mac and not for Windows?"
We both had Macs, and we met on a Mac mailing list,
Gotcha.
Mac Pro user mailing list, and that's it. I mean, that's how it came to decide that we're going to do it a Mac, because we only had Macs and we loved the Mac, and that's uh, probably still the main reason why we haven't like expanded to Windows or something else yet, because that's what we use, that's what we love, that's what we know, and not sure if I really want to go to other platforms because I'm not there. So
Right. Yeah. I mean that makes sense, right? If especially when you're building, an app that people are probably going to use every day, you want to understand the platform that you're on,
right,
and you don't just want to shove something out the door that's half of what it is on the original platform.
exactly, yeah.
Cool. So, what was the initial feature set like? Did you just talk to your co-founder and say like, we need these things? Um did you do other research? I know when I was in high school, I was just like, I'll just build this and like see what happens.
Totally me.
Yeah.
But he is actually 15 years older.
Okay. Okay.
So when we started, he was as old as I am now. That's
Gotcha.
also an interesting thought, but still,
Right.
and he had come up with a complete concept. So he was basically already done. He like he was carefully and teaching me about it. So he was like, hey, can I make interface suggestions? And then I was like, yeah, I've scribbled something. What do you think? And he's like, well, take a look at this completely finished interface mockup, and let's please build it. I want to exactly copy of that. So he was already done with the concept. And then we didn't talk to many people until we launched, because it was already at that time extremely opinionated already.
Sure.
I mean, in 2003, that's the year, by the way, where John Gruber invented Markdown, the exact same year when we launched. And we launched in 2003 a plain text app. So it was sort of a parallel development. It was a trend that was going on in the internet to switch to plain text writing with markup. And that's when John Gruber came up with Markdown in 2003. And the original Ulysses wasn't using Markdown, because there was no Markdown back then, because it just came out. And it used a different kind, its own markup, but it was plain text. And that was already quite a revolution, because we were getting shitloads of email telling us, hey, go rich text. Rich text is the way to go.
Yeah. Wow. I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because I mean, for people online today, Markdown has existed as long as anything else.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
That's really cool. Yeah. So Ulysses launched as a plain text editor. You added Markdown and a bunch of other features later. Let's fast forward a little bit to your decision to go to iOS, right? Was that
right.
like a pretty easy decision where you're like, well, the iPhone's out now, people are going to want to write on that, or?
So when the iPhone came out, our original take was, well, nobody will write on the phone. So,
yeah.
I mean, and that's still 2007 or something. That's also quite a while ago already. Yeah. So, but then, so we didn't do much for the iPhone, and also the SDKs weren't able to handle all of the kind of stuff. So, but then happened the iPad, and for the iPad, basically Marcus said, well, we can't bring Ulysses to the iPad, but what I have a nice idea for a gesture-based UI. So you have this idea of sheets and stacks of sheets, which you then can pinch to spread them out. So you just spread the stack by pinching it out, and you close it back by squeezing, and then that became Daedalus. So when the iPad came out, I think it still took us a year, because we were still doing it part-time and in our free time. But that became Daedalus. It was our writing app for iPad, which was not even, I think the first version was not even doing Markdown. It was just plain text, because even then it wasn't very, very well feasible to do Markdown and any kind of highlighting and formatting as an app developer on an iPad.
Right.
So, and then I think iOS 7, when iOS 7 launched, I forgot the year, Apple introduced new APIs. That's when it did, exactly. It's when it did the flat design. And then they finally brought over the APIs we were using on the Mac to iOS. And that sort of was like the trigger. So we can now take our code and bring it to iOS, and we don't need to rewrite the whole app to make it work on iOS. And that was really the point where we said, well, no idea how we're going to get this thing on an iPhone, but let's bring it to iPad. And this also took us a year to get the Mac version working on an iPad. But it turned out really good. And once we were done with the iPad version, interestingly, we knew how we would go to the iPhone. So initially we had no idea how to go from Mac to iPhone, because the size difference is so huge, so immense. But we were able to go from Mac to iPad. And once we were there, we were able to go to iPhone.
Today's episode is brought to you by Pantheon. WordPress 5.0 and the new editor, Gutenberg, are coming. Are you prepared? Do you want to learn about the changes in advance? Pantheon has gathered resources to help you prepare, including webinars and tutorials. Pantheon also has made it easy and free to try Gutenberg with your site before the official launch. Visit pantheon.io/Gutenberg. Let them know that How I Built It sent you. And now, back to the show. So you made this transition from Mac down to iPhone. You with iOS 7, you kind of got the APIs that you needed.
Yeah.
Was it today as I use it? I use it primarily on my iPad. I'll use it on my Mac as well. Is there feature parity pretty much between the two, or are there some differences?
There are some minor differences, but nothing major. So the platforms are different, so there's slightly different features here and there. But we also claim that it's almost feature parity. There's only very few things missing from either side, and we've worked. It took us quite a while. So from the original iPad version, which launched I think 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago, it took us like easily 2 years to get to feature parity because the Mac app was so huge already. So
gotcha.
But we're there now.
Yeah, awesome. And when you first launched, I know a lot of apps are going kind of subscription based now, which is what you guys do. I think it's a very reasonable price, especially if you rely on it every day. Were you always subscription based, or was it a one-time fee at some point?
I mean, in 2003, nobody would talk about subscriptions.
Sure, yeah.
That's one thing, and the other is we originally didn't like. It was never a question. I mean, you would just make a paid app, and you would at some point make a paid update. We failed at that. We had a decade of learning about how not to make paid updates, but we eventually succeeded. But the platform has changed so much, and the need to go to subscription has only evolved over time, and just the situation changed, and then we had to do the switch. But initially, it was not a thought.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, like today, it's there's a lot of that, and I mean, I'm a developer. I'm a web developer, and I can totally see the reasons why. Right, you don't expect somebody to buy one pair of jeans and then get every new pair of jeans for free, right? You have to buy each new pair of jeans. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues involved, but basically it's a platform that's ever evolving. I mean, there's a new OS every year, there's new devices every year, and people want to have the newest stuff on the newest phones on day one, basically, and getting that done means constant improvement, constant development, and then we're like half of the year we're only busy with adapting to the new OS and newer devices. And there's no way to realize that without a subscription. I mean, with a paid update, and so that is part of the reason.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is great. So we have a good kind of baseline for the history of Ulysses and how it works today. So why don't we get to the title question, which is how did you build it? And we could talk about kind of how you built the first version. We could talk about the iOS version, and I know that you're the lead developer. Do you have a team of developers? Just whatever you're most comfortable kind of talking about.
Interestingly, the original version is quite similar to today's version. I mean, Xcode was then still called Project Builder.
Okay.
But it's the same toolchain. I mean, it's Apple's toolchain that we used. It's still Objective-C today, no Swift. That's basically the reason for that is we started out when there was no Swift, and now we have a really, really huge code base that we just can't port or something. So we would only add parts of Swift to it, and then the tooling support for that is not so optimal. And then really like Objective-C, and then like there's a bunch of reasons, and I can see us going to Swift sometime in the future, but not right now. So that is our team is totally into. We know exactly how we need to build things
Hmm.
with Objective C and all the tools that we have, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, Objective C, that's like the classic language, right? So,
Right, right.
it's not like we're seeing a performance hit because you're not using Swift. At least as an end user, I don't see one, right? It's a
No,
very snappy app for all the platforms I use it on.
no. If that were the case, we would probably be more inclined to go
Hmm.
to Swift, but that won't happen anytime soon, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you do have a team. How do you manage that team? You said you have a big code base. I know that
Yeah.
managing a big code base with many developers can be difficult.
So we've over the years evolved into like one big repository
Hmm.
where everything is in there, and then we do pull requests. Everybody does their own features, and then makes pull requests just like when you do with the team. We're all on site, so we just talk through. We do weekly
Nice.
stand-ups. We do sprint meetings, and um, but you also could do that when you're remote. But we prefer, I don't know, I really like to work with people in the same room
Yeah.
and just be able to punch them directly when something goes on. No, but seriously, just being able to like look at each other's screen, like just like lean over and, well, yeah, this and that, yeah, exactly, and not like, oh, I need to schedule a call
Right.
and
Oh,
other kind of
let me share my screen. Yeah, whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to just yeah, talk to each other. And then also the benefit is that, I mean, it can be a bit annoying when other people are talking, but you can also overhear a conversation and then chime in when you know something that the others just forgot to talk about.
Yeah.
So that really makes a few of the discussions very efficient. So uh, and that's really good. And then we use Jira
Okay.
for as the bug tracker and sprint planning system, and we have Bitbucket server running for the code, and Bamboo for the continuous integration. So we really into
Nice.
the Atlassian stack. Um, those are great tools. Are not cheap. As soon as you as soon as you hit those 10 user barrier, they're absolutely not cheap. Um, but totally worth it.
This episode is brought to you by Backblaze. Earlier, I mentioned the importance of offsite backups and how for just $5 a month, Backblaze can get you unlimited space on their servers. But you may be wondering, how easy are restores? Well, not only can you access backups from their mobile apps, use their desktop app to initiate restores, and share backup files through links, but you can even do a restore by mail. You can buy a backup on a flash key or a hard drive, and they will mail it to you. Send the hard drive back and get a full refund. Don't get caught without a backup. For just $5 a month, you can get unlimited backups with Backblaze. That's like one drink at Starbucks. Visit backblaze.com/buildsomething to get started today. That's backblaze.com/buildsomething. Another question I'm really interested in, right? Because I'm a web developer. It's pretty easy to test my Medium. Relatively speaking, I
Mhm.
have Browser Stack and I have a couple of computers that I test on. What's it like testing your app? Do you go back and support certain versions of iOS? Do you need to do different testing for iPhone and and iPad?
Yeah,
What's that look like?
yeah. So we need to like test all the versions. We are
Mhm.
supporting 3 macOS versions back to 10.11,
Okay.
which I would really love to get rid of, but still too many users on that.
Hmm.
Can't cut it off.
Yep.
Um, and then we need to test all the iPhone device sizes. So we have iPhone SEs, iPhone 7s, 7 Pluses, iPhone 10, all the iPad sizes, iOS 10, iOS 11, all big mixture of devices. And for big releases, we do a beta test where we get so many people that we hope that we cover all
Yeah.
all the devices. And I mean, we need to test all the languages. That's maybe something you don't necessarily do for a web app. But we have 10 languages, so we need to test it in Russian, and we need to test it in Chinese and all that kind of stuff. So and then so we do a beta test where a lot of things get like fixed or tested already. But before every single release, even the point releases, we do something like a final check, what we call, is where we sit down for an entire day, the development team, and we play through every single feature. So, and that really
Wow.
is like, it really takes a day, and it's so damn exhausting. You can't imagine. It's like you're so completely wasted after like 4 hours of like breaking your app all the time.
Yeah.
And we have all the devices, all the device sizes. We have all the OSs, and we play through every single feature on every OS, on every device, and in multiple languages. And we just test it all out. And we always come out with a long, long list of things that have always been broken. that is also quite funny. So whenever we go over it, we end up with a list of, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 items of things that I mean, most of those are small things, like,
Sure.
hey, the alignment has gone broken here, like half a year ago, and this text doesn't sound well. We need to rewrite it, but then there are also bugs that have always been there. But we do a final check to just make sure that everything that is very obvious to find has been ruled out as a bug, so that we're not shipping an update where we have bugs in there that's super easy to trigger. I mean, that we still ship bugs.
Yeah.
We even ship bugs knowingly. Um, I don't know. Nobody wants to admit that, but we ship bugs knowingly. But because you can't always fix all the bugs.
Right. If you
Only if you don't look for bugs, you can say, "Hey, we have all bugs fixed."
Right.
But if you don't
Yeah.
write the bugs down, you get reported. Then you can say, "Well, we have no bugs on record here."
Yeah.
But we have a lot of bugs on record. But so we always try to fix as many as we can. But at some point, we need to make the cut. And, yeah. But the quality and stability is really key to our process. So for big releases, beta. But then really getting down to all the functions, and people rely on it. So that is. I mean, there's also, it's not a game or something.
Right.
So we really need to focus on the quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I was gonna say there, like, you find me a developer who says they just shipped something with no bugs, and I'll show you a liar or just like the greatest programmer that's ever existed. So,
It's only the former.
yeah, exactly. Um, that's great. So, man, so testing sounds like a big event for you, and rightfully so, because like you said, people rely on this. You just rolled out, as we record this, I think version 13 of Ulysses. Is
Right.
that right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I know that you just rolled out a few big features, but what are your plans kind of for the future? As we record this, WWDC is just a few days away. This episode's coming out, several weeks after
Mhm.
that, so we will know what was announced as people listen to this. But what are you looking forward to?
I'm I don't have a really a vision for what Apple will be doing next.
Mhm.
I'm just open. We're gonna see next week,
Yeah.
and we'll definitely adopt new features as they fit the app. I mean, if they don't, there have been years where we had to do a lot, and there have been years where we had to basically do nothing. So I'm curious to see what this year is.
Yeah.
Finally, though, is the first year in the 15 years of me making software professionally where we not in the middle of a development cycle over WWDC. It has happened every single year since. We always had the plan, like, let's ship this before WWDC, so we have a blank sheet of plans when
Mhm.
Apple comes and shows us the new OSs, and it never happened. We always had a big update like in July or August, and that completely messed with our plans for the new OSs. And then the whole year got mixed up. So but this time we're really ready. No, no plans or concrete plans at the moment. So we have ideas for what to do next, but we will hold out until next week to see how it affects our plans. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I will be sure to keep an eye on things. Like I said, I feel like I'm gushing, but it's I use Ulysses every day. So again, I'm very
We
excited to kind of hear the stuff that you guys are doing and you guys have worked on.
we
Um,
we have we have a very very long list of feature requests. I mean, I guess we have over 1,000 feature requests, different features requested in our bug tracker,
yeah.
and we get requested by multiple thousand people. So we count all the features and how much was which feature requested, and that is that is basically our roadmap. We're not sharing it publicly because then you commit to something and then people come and say, "Hey, you said 2 years ago," and we had that before.
Yep.
So, but we will be hunting down the most requested features, which is tables and which is linking between sheets. And so
Cool.
these are two of the
Cool.
most
Yeah. So
requested
actually,
features. We have our own agenda as well. Yeah,
yeah.
but
Cool. Yeah. So
we'll get to
yeah.
those.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I was just gonna ask, is there like a certain threshold for you to say, all right, this feature has been requested enough, or is it some combination of like it gets requested enough and it fits into like the overall vision of Ulysses? Because, I can see people saying like, well, like 1,000 people saying, well, you should have this, but it like doesn't really make sense for the app. Or, we talked about Windows. Windows is
Yeah.
probably unless you become a Windows user, we're probably
Yeah.
not going to see a Windows version of the app.
So we the features that get requested often totally make sense. So we don't have anything that gets requested very, very often that doesn't make sense. So they're all sort of fitting the bill of the app. And the difficult part for us is to figure out how to add it to the app so that it's not getting bloated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also something we'll be talking about shortly, I guess. Marcus might be doing a blog post about it, because we spend so much time on making sure that everything we add doesn't bloat the app with or water down the interface. So we spend like days and weeks trying to make features in a way that they are easier to use than before and simpler to use than before, and make the UI even less complicated while adding features and not adding new UI at
Yeah.
all. Always trying to avoid that, and that is really what takes so much time in getting that done. So that is the hard part also about all those features that get requested. They totally make sense, and I can totally see us adding them, but I know how much time it will take um, to get them out to really, because it all the features. I mean, the more features you have, every new feature has some interlinkage to everything else you have, and the more you have, the more interlinkages you get with every new feature. I mean, it's exponential, and
Right.
that is what makes it so complex. Going forward, even it gets harder with every single release to add new stuff, because you need to like all fix all those links, and adding the feature turns out is only like half the time. Getting the rest of the app adjusted so it perfectly suits the feature is like really the rest of half of the time. Um, because like we had something like like new deadlines to goals, and then we now need to ship an update, because of course people want to filter for goals with deadlines or show me everything that has a deadline. You can't do that now, but it's like all those interlinkages. Yeah, you need to update all the filters, all the interfaces, and if you want to make it really not feel like plugged on and halfway thought through, then every single feature gets more complex. And so from that point of view, we have so many features requested that we theoretically could like just go with that for years. That's really our backlog, and things that we wanted to do really would last for years. and we just go where it hurts the most at the moment. So that's really we are really going. Oh, we really need to do that, and then I hope that we'll get some of the most requested features done over the next year, so that we get maybe a bit more freedom to like wade out into more complex future things. But for now, I guess we'll still work on those obvious omissions, as
Right.
people tend to say.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much for that insight. We are coming up on time, and so I'm going to ask you my favorite question, which is, do you have any trade secrets for us?
Trade secrets. I don't know. Maybe realize that there's no shortcuts. That would be my big secret. People always hope that there's shortcuts, but in my experience, and I think I can say that with 15 years, there's no shortcuts. Every shortcut you take will bite you back later. So everything you do will come back at you at some point. If you like us want to work on one thing for a very prolonged time, if you do a new thing every other year or something, then maybe not. But if you try to work on something for really long because you love it a lot, then you always need to think about how can this bite back. And every shortcut you take, every technical debt you take, you have to pay back, and you have to really. It gets more and more expensive over time. So that is, we always try to build the right solution and not the quick solution. Because if you have done too many quick solutions, then there will be no solutions left.
Well, I really like that. So that is excellent advice for development and for life. Max, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks again so much to Max for his time. It was really interesting to hear his development process and how it's changed over the years, and how the team over at Ulysses moves with those changes and everything that goes on with Mac and iOS. And while I wish they did have a Windows app, I understand why they would want to focus in really closely on the Apple ecosystem. So definitely check out Ulysses in the App Store for both macOS and iOS. I am a huge fan of it. Thanks again to our sponsors, Pantheon and Backblaze. Definitely check them out. Pantheon is offering you incredible hosting for free to get started, and Backblaze is offering you unlimited off-site backups at $5 a month. There's no price on peace of mind, but $5 a month is insanely low. So totally worth it. My question of the week for you is, what app do you use for writing? If you blog or you write scripts or whatever it is you need to do to get your thoughts down online, what do you use? I use Ulysses every day, and I'd love to hear the tools that you're using. Let me know on Twitter at jcasafona, or email me at joe@howibuilt.it. You can also join the Facebook community over at howibuilt.it/Facebook. I ask the question over there too, and you'll have the opportunity to discuss with other listeners. I want to build a strong community for this podcast, and Facebook is absolutely the place to do it. As always, for all of the show notes, head over to howibuilt.it/97. If you like the show, head over to Apple Podcast and leave us a rating and review. It helps people discover us, and friends, it's been working. I really appreciate your support on this. Thanks so much, and until next time, get out there and build something.